If you, right now, were transported aboard the Titanic on that fateful night in 1912, your chances of surviving the disaster would be exponentially higher than the 31% who actually made it to safety. The difference isn't about courage or luck. It's about a century of brutal lessons learned, of scientific breakthroughs, and a complete re-evaluation of what it means to be prepared for the unimaginable. The Titanic was born from an era of unchecked hubris, a symbol of man's conquest over nature. She was the largest ship afloat, deemed unsinkable by her creators, a marvel of engineering with a double bottom and 16 watertight compartments. White Star Line, her owner, was less concerned with lifeboats than with deck space and the grandeur of the ship's opulent interiors. This wasn't malice, it was the accepted wisdom of the time. Who would need more lifeboats when the ship herself was a lifeboat? This profound overconfidence was the first, fatal flaw. They had secured enough capacity for just over half of the 2,200 souls on board, and even that number exceeded the legal requirements of a bygone age. Imagine the atmosphere as she steamed across the Atlantic. The crisp night air, the endless expanse of stars, the low thrum of the engines beneath your feet. For the first-class passengers, it was a floating palace. Gourmet meals, gilded staterooms, live orchestras. For those in second class, a comfortable, modern journey. For steerage, it was the dream of a new life in America, a cramped but hopeful passage. Nobody, not a single soul, harbored the slightest dread. Why would they? They were on the pinnacle of human achievement. Then came the warnings. Multiple wireless messages crackled across the airwaves from other ships, reporting large ice fields. One crucial message, from the nearby steamer Californian, was sent directly to the Titanic's wireless room. It warned of dense ice ahead, but the Titanic's overworked Marconi operators were inundated with passenger messages, sending personal greetings and stock market updates across the ocean. The Californian's urgent warning was cut off, famously, with a dismissive, shut up, I'm busy." It was never relayed to the bridge. This wasn't a malicious act, just human error. A series of small, cascading failures, each one tightening the noose. At 11:40 p.m., April 14, the impossible happened. A lookout spotted an iceberg dead ahead. 6 bells rang, followed by a frantic telephone call to the bridge. "Iceberg right ahead." First Officer William Murdoch barked orders, "Hard a starboard," and "full astern." But it was too late. The ship, traveling at nearly full speed, too fast for icy waters, began its agonizing turn. The starboard side scraped along the submerged spur of the berg, tearing a series of gashes below the waterline across 6 of her watertight compartments. 6. She was designed to stay afloat with 4 compartments breached. 6 meant certain doom. What did that impact feel like? Many passengers reported feeling nothing more than a slight shudder, a gentle jolt like brushing against a wave. Some mistook it for the engines reversing. Glasses might have rattled in the dining saloons. Others, especially in the lower decks, heard a terrifying grinding sound, a metallic shriek as steel was peeled back like a tin can. One passenger, Lawrence Beasley, later described it as a long drawn-out, sickening noise, followed by a vibration that shook the entire vessel. It was so subtle, so unexpected, that it took time for comprehension to dawn. The first crucial piece of knowledge we possess today, which they didn't, is the absolute and terrifying reality of a breach. There was no instant, ship-wide alert system that accurately conveyed the damage. Captain Smith, roused from his sleep, received the grim news from Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer, who had personally inspected the damage. Andrews, a man who knew his creation intimately, looked Smith in the eye and delivered the death sentence. "The ship is doomed." He estimated she had an hour, perhaps 2, at most. But this chilling truth was kept from the passengers for precious minutes, then for an hour, as the crew tried to maintain order. Now imagine being one of those passengers, bundled back into your cabin after the initial jostle, told there was nothing to worry about. You might have seen some crewmen looking grim, but the lights were on, the band was playing, and the ship felt solid beneath your feet. This false sense of security, cultivated by the officers to prevent panic, cost lives. Today, any serious breach would trigger immediate, comprehensive alarms and clear instructions to abandon ship, with video monitors showing damage in real time. There would be no doubt. The order to uncover lifeboats came, and then the first boats were lowered. But here's where another layer of tragedy unfolded. The crew, despite drills, had never practiced a full evacuation. They didn't even know the lifeboats could hold their full capacity. Many were lowered half empty, a devastating waste of precious space. Boat number 7, the first to leave, left with just 28 people, though it could hold 65. Fear of lowering a fully loaded boat led to a cautious, almost tentative approach. Women and children first, but not all women and children if it meant the boat wasn't packed. This was not due to malice, but rather the crew's unfamiliarity with the boat's limits and a desperate, but ultimately flawed, attempt to maintain safety. What about the third-class passengers, the hundreds dreaming of new lives? They were largely confined to their quarters below decks by gates and barriers, standard practice at the time to prevent the spread of infectious diseases upon arrival in America. As the ship tilted and confusion mounted, they struggled to find their way through mazes of corridors, only to find stairways blocked. Were these gates locked to deliberately exclude them? While debated, the practical effect was the same: they were held back. By the time many reached the boat deck, it was too late, the last boats having already departed. Today, international maritime law demands clear, unimpeded access for all passengers to life-saving equipment, regardless of ticket class. The idea of holding people below deck in an emergency is unthinkable. As the boat dipped lower and lower, the tilt of the decks became more pronounced. The initial casual strolls turned into desperate scrambles. What began as an orderly, if confusing, evacuation devolved into controlled panic, then outright terror. The air grew colder, thick with the smell of coal smoke and sea salt, now mixed with the metallic tang of fear. The screams began, tentative at first, then a growing chorus of human desperation echoing across the dark, star-filled ocean. The ship's orchestra, a beacon of stoicism, played on, their melodies a haunting counterpoint to the unfolding tragedy. Then came the terrible, undeniable sounds. The ship groaned, a monstrous, tearing shriek of metal as her hull strained under the immense pressure. Witnesses described it like 1,000 tons of crockery being thrown downstairs. The lights flickered, a terrifying visual metaphor for the ship's failing life, before going out completely, plunging the deck into darkness, illuminated only by the faint starlight and the emergency lamps of the lifeboats pulling away. This was the moment the unsinkable lie was finally, brutally, exposed. At around 2:18 a.m., the Titanic's stern rose high into the air, exposing her propellers. People clung desperately to railings, or jumped into the frigid abyss. The ship broke in two, between the third and fourth funnels, a catastrophic structural failure hastened by the immense stress. The forward section plunged first, dragging hundreds with it into the depths. A few minutes later, the stern, still afloat for a brief, agonizing period, rose perpendicular to the water, a towering silhouette against the night sky, before sliding beneath the waves, taking over 1,000 souls with it. The silence that followed was even more terrifying than the screams. A vast, echoing emptiness, broken only by the pitiful cries for help from those who found themselves in the unimaginably cold water. The true killer wasn't drowning for most, but hypothermia. The North Atlantic waters were a brutal 28 degrees Fahrenheit, below freezing. The average person, without a life jacket, would be rendered unconscious in 15 to 30 minutes, with death following shortly after. Even with a life jacket, the cold quickly robbed them of sensation, then consciousness, then life. We now understand the mechanisms of hypothermia far better than they did then. There were heartbreaking near misses. The SS Californian, which had warned of ice hours earlier, was just miles away. Her crew saw the Titanic's distress rockets, but misinterpreted them as company signals or fireworks. Her wireless operator had gone to bed. They simply stood by, close enough to see the tragedy unfold, but too far, too complacent, to intervene. Had they acted, hundreds, perhaps even thousands, might have been saved. This single oversight highlights the fragility of communication and decision-making in a crisis. So, why would you, today, have survived? Firstly, your survival training would be vastly superior. Every cruise ship today conducts mandatory, thorough lifeboat drills, showing passengers exactly what to do and where to go. You'd know the capacity of your lifeboat and demand it be filled. Secondly, the sheer number of life-saving devices would be staggering. Modern ships carry enough lifeboats and life rafts for every single person on board, plus an additional 25% capacity. They're also enclosed, insulated, and equipped with communication devices, flares, and emergency supplies. Thirdly, communication would be instantaneous and unequivocal. A satellite distress beacon would have blasted its signal to every ship within range, identifying the precise location and nature of the emergency. No more dismissed wireless messages. No more misinterpreted flares. Rescue efforts would be coordinated with precision, not guesswork. And crucially, those rescue ships would have the tools and knowledge to deal with mass hypothermia, not just plug bodies from the water. Finally, your clothing. You might not think about it, but modern cold weather gear, designed for extreme conditions, could extend your survival time significantly compared to the heavy woolen suits and evening gowns of 1912. Even the simple knowledge of how to huddle for warmth or keep your head above water would be ingrained in you. The Titanic disaster was a brutal, epic-defining lesson in humility and preparedness. It shattered the illusion of human invincibility and forced a complete overhaul of maritime safety regulations. The International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, SOLAS, was born from her wreckage, mandating 24-hour wireless watch, sufficient lifeboat capacity for all, and rigorous safety drills. The legacy of the Titanic isn't just a story of a ship that sank. It's a testament to the thousands of lives lost that night, whose sacrifice unknowingly paved the way for the safety of millions of travelers who came after. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes, the greatest leaps forward in safety are tragically carved from the deepest of human errors.